History, specifically modern history, probably isn't as long as you think. It may seem easy to put different historical people into different eras, but sometimes that's not the case. Take Napoleon and Abraham Lincoln for example. When Napoleon died, Abraham Lincoln was 12 years old, yet history often paints these two eras as completely separate times. Modern humans advance incredibly fast, which often means we take for granted how close in time certain historical figures actually existed. Another example, which may seem crazy, is that Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, was in his late teens when Orville Wright, one of the creators of the first plane, passed away. To further exemplify the concept of how fast humans really move, the first plane looked like this. And only 56 years later, the United States would introduce the X-15. That's the same era, but a very visible change in progression. Another example for the artists out there is the fact that Picasso outlived Jimi Hendrix. To most, it may seem that their styles, although different arts, could never exist at the same time, yet they not only existed at the same time. The much earlier painter, born in 1881, outlived Jimi Hendrix, who was born in 1942. This really puts into perspective how closely most of us have actually lived. The next, and quite surprising example, is that Charlie Chaplin and 50 Cent lived within the same lives. Even I was surprised by this one, but yes, the two overlapped by 2 years. The world-famous rapper was born in 1975, and Charlie Chaplin died in 1977, meaning that these two coexisted in history despite living on very different planets. Another example of how recently we have adapted to our modern lives can be seen through the fact that Thomas Edison and William Shatner lived during the same time. The inventor of the light bulb, something that is probably around you right now, was alive at the same time as Captain Kirk. Or, if you find war history interesting, you'd like to know that Winston Churchill, who lived from 1874 to 1965, was alive at the same time as Brad Pitt. Although the actor was 2 when Churchill was alive, he probably would have liked Fight Club. Or, for the Wild West fans, you'll be interested to know that Wyatt Earp, the Western lawman, lived at the same time as Marvel's Stan Lee. To come from Horses and Lassos to eventually Endgame is a pretty big jump. The next example is Ben Franklin and Isaac Newton. Yes, the founding father and the man who discovered gravity lived at the same time, and for quite a while too. Franklin was in his 20s when Newton died. Yes, so I suppose the Declaration of Independence and the American Constitution went hand in hand with gravity. The next example is the fact that John Wayne lived at the same time as Kanye West. Yes, the legendary American actor, from what seems like lifetimes ago, lived during the same era as inevitably Yeezy's, Good Albums, and well, Kanye West. Next is Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. The two queens actually lived during the same time, only for 1 year, but still pretty fascinating taking into account how different each of their kingdoms were. Or that Helen Keller and Shania Twain lived during the same lives. Yes, the activist and the artist are from the same time on our planet, and I guess if you're interested, Twain still seems to perform frequent tours. And on the topic of tours, it seems that Taylor Swift is getting some pretty huge headlines, but what else is surprising? That she was on the same planet as Greta Garbo, the other blonde actress who lived from 1905 through 1990. Another example that includes Abe Lincoln is that him and Charles Darwin not only lived during the same era, but were also born on the exact same day, on February 12th, 1809. Evolution and civil wars. What a combo. The next example is Cecil B. DeMille and James Cameron. The two famous directors actually lived at the same time, both directing some of the greatest films of their eras, but on seemingly different scales. Let's take some time to appreciate Terminator. The final example of this video is Alfred Hitchcock and Kate Hudson. Yeah, I guess these two also lived at the same time. Pretty interesting that we went from inventors to, well, artists. But times change, and so do priorities. Anyways, thanks for watching. Make sure to comment who you lived at the same time as. Like, and subscribe for future videos.